Hello everybody, it's Merlin here, and in response to my Fullmetal Alchemist tag, apparently Sandro, one of my subscribers, said that he wouldn't do my tag unless I did his tag, which apparently he tagged me in a while ago. It was a HunterxHunter tag, but I looked through my old messages and I didn't see anything, so it might have been a while ago and I missed it, so I figured that's fair enough. I usually like to do tags when I am tagged, even if I don't notice it right away. And this one was a HunterxHunter tag, and I'm guessing it was the one from a couple months ago. I think it might have been started 6 months ago or something, but yeah, I found a couple questions, and I guess this will have to suffice. So let's get it started. I haven't talked about HunterxHunter in a while, so this is a good thing. What's your favorite arc? Now, for a long time, it was actually the Hunter exam, because I liked the character dynamics and how much it demonstrated for Gon and how they all had to interact, which I do think is still very good, but I think that my favorite arc, upon reflection, is probably Yorknew arc, because when Kurapika basically just takes over that show, I mean, it basically becomes the Kurapika show, and I like how that arc was just very noir, very dark, very based around the mafia, organized crime element. It was just a much seedier, darker turn for the series, which I enjoyed, and it also put in the spotlight some of my favorite villains in the Phantom Troop. I mean, the Spiders are to this day still my favorite villains in the series, even though they are not exactly, standard villains. Like a lot of Togashi's works, his characters are a little more complicated than your standard shonen fare. I find them all very interesting. I like a lot of their powers, and you got to see how awesome they were, how frightening in the underworld, and you got to see them showcase all their abilities. And Kurapika, you got to learn a lot more about his backstory. And admittedly, the other characters kind of just become supporting characters in what just kind of becomes Kurapika's show, which is sort of what it feels like HunterxHunter is, where we just kind of bounce between which character takes the spotlight completely. But I guess in terms of just the development of his character, I think Kurapika gets the best more than anyone else. I mean, a lot of people do say that, obviously Gon and Killua go through a lot in the Chimera Ant arc, which is true, but I think that particular one is showcased primarily more for the battles. I mean, Miriam is a very interesting villain, obviously, but I guess something about the tone of the Kurapika stuff, especially in the old OVAs, just really spoke to me. I really liked that turn. It was very awesome. I liked a lot of the fights in that one. They were very, very intense. My favorite character, I mean, this is kind of a, I think this is pretty obvious. I mean, he was my avatar for a long time, was Hisoka. I mean, Hisoka is my favorite character overall, but if you want to push him over into the villain category, he's just so delightfully evil, and he's just so, I don't know, his powers are interesting, and he's so damn creepy, but there's something kind of fascinating about his bizarre and disturbing fascination with Gon that I find, I don't know, compelling in some way, and also the fact that he's so mysterious and we still don't know much about him, and I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of potential, and just his fight with Gon is very important too, which I'll get into later. But I guess if we push Hisoka to the side, I mean, in terms of the main characters, I guess Kurapika is my favorite just because I like his backstory, and I tend to like the more intellectual and contemplative and reflective characters. He's very similar to Kurama from Yu Yu Hakusho, kind of the older brother of this series. But honestly, when it comes to the four main characters, I love them all pretty closely. Leorio is a close second, even though he's still very underdeveloped, and I also really do enjoy Killua, and even Gon. I think they're all very well done, pretty well balanced. My favorite fight, well, that's still Hisoka versus Gon, and I will admit that, yes, the Chimera Ant arc and even the Yorknew arc probably had some better fights, but just the culmination in that little tournament arc with Gon and Hisoka, based on everything that established had happened in the Hunter exam, which, Hisoka more or less, made Gon feel extremely helpless and challenged him and established dominance over him. It was so frightening and scary, and to see Gon get to stand on his own and basically show that he still could go up against Hisoka and wouldn't play his game, wouldn't give in to that fear, was a great character moment for him. It's also one of the few instances where a main shonen protagonist loses the battle, and it still is a victory for him in a sense, and I think that's kind of subtle. That's why it's my favorite battle, more for the subtext than anything else. It's also very well animated, especially in the new one. What fight would you like to see? I just mostly want to see the Phantom Troop go up against Gon's crew at some point. I know that's a lot of different fights, but I feel like that's what the Battle Royale should be. I don't know if that's how the series is going to conclude, but that seems like the logical choice to me at this point. More specifically, though, I do think a Hisoka versus Chrollo fight would be pretty great. Most anticipated moment? I mean, honestly, a lot of the stuff about the Dark Continent is still pretty vague, and the future of the series is so vague, and a lot of the possibilities of what could happen is still very much up in the air. So, really, this might sound kind of strange, but my most anticipated moment is honestly for the series to just kind of end, like for one big final arc and for us to get some closure, because it's just going on so long. I mean, it's kind of gotten past its initial love for me. I'm not quite into the hype as much as I once was. Maybe a final rematch between Gon and Hisoka might be awesome to see Gon actually beat Hisoka. Would be kind of one of the logical big things that should happen, hopefully. But it's hard to say at this point. My favorite pairing, I guess, between characters, I mean, I feel like the obvious thing to say is Gon and Killua, but honestly, I've always preferred Leorio and Kurapika because I think they have a great dynamic. I mean, they started off, because they're so differently, they kind of hated each other, but, they learn more about each other and they become very close friends, and if the Hunter x Hunter group is kind of a family, they are basically the parents, whereas Gon and Killua, being slightly younger, kind of are the kids, and I do kind of joke about it with some of my friends that Hunter x Hunter, like a lot of shonen shows to an extent, but perhaps more so, does have some somewhat, homoerotic subtext there. There's some hints of that, and you could say it's just, a bromance, but I don't know, especially the way that they kind of end the original series. It's like, come on, that's what they were going for, and I'm totally fine with it. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get to the point where we'll have, like, two major heroes in a shonen show be openly homosexual, but, I think it's perfectly fine if that was the case, but whether or not it's really there, I mean, that's just kind of how I've always seen it, and it doesn't bother me, but Hunter x Hunter's ripe with that stuff anyway. You've got Hisoka and all his issues, which are pretty creepy anyway, but that's a whole other thing. On a scale of 1 to 10, rate how much you like the series. Well, both series are, I guess, about an 8 for me. I mean, I really do like Hunter x Hunter overall, but as time's gone by, I've really been able to see that there are some flaws, and it can be really frustrating as a fan of the show just because of the constant hiatuses, and honestly, it's harder for me to get excited for it when, there's only a little bit released at a time, and you just have no idea when Togashi's going to stop, which is nothing against him, but, I guess if there's a whole nother anime segment completed at some point, I might get more interested in it, but I think that it's going to be a while before Hunter x Hunter really captures the magic it once had for me. But I still do like what I've seen thus far, especially the original series, so I'd say a solid 8 is pretty high up there. It is still one of my favorites. And yeah, those are my Hunter x Hunter questions. I mean, this isn't necessarily a tag I guess you guys have to do, but you guys can feel free to answer below your thoughts on these questions. I'm perfectly fine with that too, but Sandro can now do the Full Metal Alchemist tag, and you guys can as well. Do both if you like. Alright, everybody. Merlin out. Peace.